then just unmute yourself. That's how we sort of tend to go with that. So is there anything you guys wanted to share from last time, or anything you want to do this week particularly? In terms of we did some activations last time. Is there anything that's come out of that? Anything you want to ask first, or just I'm free, whatever you'd like to do?
I'll let everybody else go first, because I had some unusual encounters that I don't think that has been addressed.
Okay.
Okay, so let them go first.
Okay.
You can go first if you want. I mean, I really don't have too many questions, so you can go ahead and ask your question if you desire.
Yeah, if it's interesting, it's not been addressed before, go for it. Just need to...
Well, I went back through the door made out of the Hebrew letter.
Yeah.
And the last time I had stopped right after I crossed over the threshold, and I saw that the stars and everything now had like a purple haze. So this time I went further, and the reason why there was a purple haze is because there was an immense bright light, clouds, bright light. I saw the Lion of Judah, and he was transformed into like a lion of fire. And as I started walking into that light, it entered into me. I became part of it, and it became part of me. And God said that's like, because I wrote it all down, it's like transfiguration.
Yep.
And I hadn't heard anybody speak about that. I mean, it was great. It was wonderful. It was really wonderful. And that's when God spoke to me about the 7 mountains that I had sent a message to you, because I didn't hear the names of all of them. He asked me which mountain did I want. Yeah. Well, I don't know enough about him to know anything, so I waited to see what he would say. And he says, there's the mountain of the Spirit, and immediately I was on top of a mountain, and what you felt was wind. And I thought, well, this is great. I love the Holy Spirit and everything, but I thought the wise thing to do is ask God for the mountain where he's at, because where he's at, you have everything else. So I just told him, I said, God, I kept saying, you know, I want the mountain where you're at. And then he told me, he says, well, don't you see, you have the mountain of revelation. And when I was on the mountain of revelation, he says, you're right on the precipice, and I'm standing on the edge, and I can see, I guess it's New Jerusalem. It's a white city. I saw a white city. I didn't get to go there or enter in yet. And then I'm taken from that vision to a place where I'm in a room, and there's a throne in front, but this throne, I'm seeing like I'm seeing myself from behind. And I have on some type of cloak again, and it glitters like diamonds. Then it turns to gold. Then it turns to diamonds, and I have a crown in my hand, and I put my crown on that seat. So the last thing that I did see a glimpse of the ark, and I jumped right out of that because it moved like it's alive.
Oh yeah.
I know. It moved, and that startled me, and I'm just like, you know. And the last thing that I saw was on Sunday, because I've been practicing going in there even while like I'm at work or something, you know, because I work at a very high-stress job. So what I try to do is think about going in the river, the water cleansing me. I've managed to keep that place for like half a day. Not all day, but I'm making progress, and it's really helpful.
Good.
But when the evangelist came on Sunday, and he was really talking about giving your all for God, all your dreams, all your desires, all everything, and I mean, I've gone through sanctification, I've gone through the different levels in, you know, normal Christianity, but this time I had an open vision when standing at the altar, and it was so overwhelming. And I entered into this white room, and there's white thrones lined up on both sides. I don't see anybody sitting in them. And then there's a white throne in the center, and the Lion of Judah sitting on it. And I'm in front of them, and it's like I'm making some type of agreement. So I don't know where I am or what I'm doing, but that's what I saw. And I've never heard anybody mention these unusual things.
Okay.
As you can tell, it was overwhelming. The sacredness and everything was just so overwhelming.
Sure. Yeah. Well, in these type of experiences, once you begin to engage in the mountain, which is the top mountain within the realm of the kingdom of God, is you. You know, it's basically who you are as a son of God in terms of authority to rule, and it encompasses, you know, your destiny and the mandate you have for the things that God's called you into your life. And as you've been, you know, engaging with some of the mountains there, that is your heart is begin to be drawn towards some of the requirement that comes with that level of responsibility. And so it opens up encounters and experiences where God begins to show you the next levels. And so, okay, you say, yeah, I've surrendered and I've sort of done my sanctification, whatever. And yeah, most, you know, going through dealing with that is great. But when it comes to some things, it's like there's a level of surrender. That's why you saw the altar. And it's like, okay, what is that representing? Well, you know, there's two altars. You know, in the tabernacle, there is the altar which represents, you know, where the animals were sacrificed, which obviously represents the cross, which we go through for sanctification. And so that, as we surrender to the cross, we surrender to, I am crucified with Christ, it's no longer I who living. And so you're dealing with the whole thing of, you know, your old nature is dead, and you know, that's the first level of sanctification, really, where you're talking about dividing soul and spirit. You know, actually, yeah, what's of me and what isn't of me, and I'm surrendering what isn't of me, and it's going to die, and I'm going to walk into life. But then, in the holy place, you have the altar of incense, and the altar of incense is where our life, in everything we do for God, and our whole destiny in God, we surrender on that altar to arise before God as a sweet smelling savor and an offering. And so that's taking it at a different level. And really, when you're taking it at that level, you are then engaged at a place where the light of God is going to shine, and it's going to reveal the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And therefore it's going to look at the issues of trading, things where the motives of my heart. And so when you then come before the thing, here's the Lion of the tribe of Judah, hey, there are all these thrones here, nothing's on them, but they're white, there's light, then God is beginning to show you that those are the areas that you are surrendering on that altar. And he is going to be on those thrones because he's Lord in that higher level of authority, but then actually you are going to be on those thrones, because everything is a progression. When we make him Lord, then he begins to engage us in the friendship and relationship, which we're no longer stewards or servants, but actually when then he then begins to invite us to become Lord, he becomes king. So the whole thing where you're seeing thrones is a representation of kingship. And so the authority of kingship, and you laid down the crown on the throne. And so that was a representation. You were laying down your kingly authority, or your authority to rule, to a higher level of authority. So he becomes king, you become Lord, and you then can enter into that level of authority. And ultimately, same process takes place once we've established lordship and we've been ruling on our mountains, we've been ruling the 7 mountains, and we start to outwork that in our daily lives, then we can get access to another level, and then that represents going before the ark, in which you go through the veil of the life, but that takes it to another level. And Hebrews, the whole thing based in Hebrews 4:12, dividing soul and spirit, dividing thoughts and intentions of the heart, hey, dividing bone and marrow. So there's a level of genetic transformation that needs to take, which is why you had the whole thing of transfiguration, and you were shown, hey, there's a cloud here of something which is light of God, which is a transfiguration process. Transfiguration is the same word in Greek, metamorphosis, for change, same word for transformation as in Romans 12:1 and 2. So you're then taken to a level where you're being shown that actually there is the genetic transformation that needs to take your place. So you are going to be shining with light, because actually the DNA, which has genetic stuff in it which is not necessarily pure, God refines that, and actually in the refining process you then get to come at another level, a sonship, and that takes you into that city of God. So God is showing you through symbolic illustrations of the process and journey that you're on, and he's showing you, hey, he's inviting you to come deeper, further into the realms of heaven, to experience what it means to come into the fullness of your destiny and what you're called to do. And so that's why some of these things are really moving, because actually they are touching you at a deeper level and calling you to a deeper level, but they're also showing you there are requirements of surrender that has to be taken place in these deeper levels, because we can't come into it in a sense of, hey, I'm a king, great. It's actually, no, we come in humility, coming before the Father. Because if we're going to operate in kingship, we come under his fatherhood, his tutorage, because as Jesus is King of Kings, he was under his Father, and he only did the things he saw the Father doing. So even though he had the authority in operating in kingship, it was completely surrendered to his relationship with the Father. And as we surrender into our lordship, then we're under Jesus's tutorage in kingship, because he's the king. So it's this process of deeper levels of engagement in the realms of heaven that we learn to go through, and as we go through them, God will begin to transform you, and he will probably give you things and show you things along the way which are part of that, hey, this stuff needs to go. Yeah, that whole motivation needs to go there, that needs to go there, but it's because he loves you and he is calling you into those areas of destiny. So, a lot of the symbolism and the things you've seen are I see part of that process. So, hey, what you do know is you have 2 mountains, one of revelation and one of the spirit. Okay, what do those things mean? So focus on those right now, so you can rule from those mountains, or I don't know whether you've been invested on the mountain of your life yet, or whether you're just seeing the mountains, or whether you're there with scepter, crown, and mantle, because obviously one of the things, again, you saw a mantle, you saw it changing between diamonds and gold. And again, that's showing you that there are 2 different levels to come through. Because there's there's the mantles we get in the realm of kingship are different from the mantle we get in the lordship, so some of these things, they're just part of the journey that you're on, but it's okay, where do I start? And that's part of the thing. It's like, because it can be, wow, this is really overwhelming. Am I supposed to go to that place? Am I supposed to go to that place? Am I supposed to go back there? Actually, wisdom, I went through this door, so that seemed something that, well, what was it showing me when I went through that door? Well, actually, your destiny is written in the stars. It's like, in a real sense, your destiny ultimately is to bring light back into black holes and bring where the fallen angels have left an area of the universe that is without light. your transfiguration will eventually bring light back into those realms. So we get to rule in galaxies and rule in areas. You know, so some of it again is just, hey, this is where it's going, but you have to start somewhere. And so the starting point would be, okay, I have 2 mountains that I can see. I've got 2 mountains that I've got revelation about. I'm going to get the mandates for those mountains. I'm going to get those mandates and those scrolls authorized. I'm going to get angels on assignment in the court of angels to those mountains. And then I can then begin to pursue the others. You know, because once you are faithful in what you've seen, then God begins to open more. Now, some people get 7 mountains all in one go. Some people get 1, and they don't, you know, it's basically all individual and all personal. So it's not really, you can't sort of put a formula on it. Hence, you know, some of these things, it's like, you know, the symbol of it is key, just to tune into it. What is God really trying to show me in this? And all those things were all connected, you know, to the journey that you're on. You know, but my encouragement would be, you know, start with what you've been shown. What is it to have a mountain of the Spirit? Is that your spirit that you have a mountain over? Is that the realm of the Spirit in terms of spiritual gifts and that type of realm? And is God calling you to open up spiritual gifts? There's another area, you know, some of it is, the next step is I go to the court of strategy, and the war court, and I get a strategy for that mountain. What does it mean? Because I could probably give you 50 things that the mountain of the Spirit could mean, but you need to know what they mean for you. That means you going and getting, I have this mountain comes with a mandate, I have a scroll that's associated with it, I get that scroll revealed, and then once I've got a revelation of the strategy of that scroll, what it is, then I can go and get the angelic assignments, and then I can then start to call things that be not as if they were for my mountain. I can begin to move mountains, like Jesus said, speak to this mountain, it will be cast into the sea, because there will probably be obstacles to you outworking that area of your authority. So you can move those things from that position. You know, there's things you can do from your mountain once you have the clear understanding of what it is. And then get angels, because if you have things which are over in the atmosphere of the earth, which are blockages over the area you live, or over the church you live, or the over your town, or whatever, then we need to clear those things. Because if it's over, if the mountain of the Spirit is just over your church, let's say, or where you're connected, great. Then you get involved with the church angels, and you get your angels involved in clearing the atmosphere, which opens up that realm of the Spirit for whatever God's calling you to do in it. If it's over your region, city, town, area, whatever, then what you would do in the angels being assigned to it, there will be different sorts of angels that will be assigned. If you have a regional mandate to release something of the Spirit, or whatever that mandate means for you, there will be different angels that get assigned to it. And so, you know, I would begin to just meditate on, okay, the Spirit. God, show me. I'm going to go. Things like that, I just go and take into my garden, and I go and sit with God, and we just hang out, and I just sort of say, okay, well, what's this mean? You know, what do you mean when you say the Spirit? And just get a flow of revelation that comes to give revelation of the Spirit. You know, what that mountain is. You know, and go from there. You know, and once you have that revelation, then you can go through the judicial process of getting it authorized and seeing it released. You know, and actually the timing of it. You know, is this something that it actually is going to be tomorrow, next week, next month, this year? You get a sense of timing, and things grow and develop. You know, in an area of the Spirit, let's say, I don't know, the spirit of prophecy, and you begin to start prophesying. Well, you might begin to prophesy over a person, which is great, and that might open up a realm of releasing a flow. But then, okay, it probably isn't, as you embrace it, it's not going to stop there. You may get recognized with that prophetic spirit, and therefore you begin to prophesy over the church. You get to prophesy into specific destiny areas, all sorts of things can develop, but you start where you start. And God's looking for obedience for the first step. You know, that's the key. I've found in everything, once we take the first step of obedience, then you find the next steps and the doors that are open and the opportunities are open as a result of our step of obedience. And depending on what you find on the scroll and on the mantle, on the mandate that you've got, then it will determine, you know, what things you have to do from your mounting and how it gets outworked. So until you find it, then you just got the name, and it's like the name could mean, you know, revelation mountain. Well, again, there's 1,000 things that could mean. What does it mean for you? What does that mean for your sphere of operation? You have a sphere which is entitled revelation. So does that mean that you're going to bring revelation? Does that mean you release other people into revelation? You know, is there anything blocking? So are there any dragons and things circling the area? You know, are there things that, because if you know, you've seen the mountain, have you been on the throne on the mountain, and have you taken the position, or actually is something else on the throne? That's, again, you've got to go and look to see, because if there's stuff which a dragon has been blocking over a period of years in the area of revelation, once you deal with that dragon and you split it open, out will come a whole load of things that will give you some more indications of what that revelation thing means and how you're going to release it in the future. You know, so, you know, the encounters are great, you know, but what they're doing is saying, okay, let's now start to begin the journey towards where those encounters were leading you. Does that sort of make sort of sense?
Yes, and like I said, I really appreciate the help.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, it's good. I mean, you know, because I have seen a lot of these things in these places, so, you know, I tune into it reasonably easily to sort of pick up the flow. But, you know, that's why sometimes having encounters is great, but what do they mean is another matter, and helping each other to help understand what they mean. And then once you get that, then it's easier the next time, because you begin to see yourself, oh right, this is leading me here, or this is engaging me here. So yeah, that's good. Great. So anyone else got anything?
Yeah, it's great because you do have a way of, you know, flowing in the spirit and opening these things up and giving more understanding to what we're experiencing. The scepter, you talked about the scepter.
Yeah.
And I had been given a scepter, and, you know, God showed me how to extend it to certain people in certain situations for favor. But I had an experience where he was holding an iron rod.
Yeah. And
the tip was red hot. And he said, "Do you sure you want this? It will hurt." And, you know, enthusiastically, I grabbed it with my left hand.
Okay.
And my thumb, forefinger, and middle finger, I mean, just blistered. And it was, I'm sorry, it blistered. And when I came out one level, I was looking and I saw it blistered. When I came back to the natural, there was nothing, but my whole hand and arm was on fire for days.
Yeah.
I'm still seeking some understanding on that.
Yeah, no. Interestingly, when you reached out for it with the wrong hand, because if you think of that, Jesus is standing on the right hand of the Father, his left hand is in the Father's right hand, because the right hand is the symbol of authority. So he's standing on the right hand of the Father because he's standing in a place of authority. But that means his left hand is connected to the right hand of the Father, which is the connection of authority that we're coming through him and from him. So we need to hold our scepter in our right hand, because that means we're connected up to God, and it's not us who is trying to rule, but we are ruling on behalf of and standing in the right place of authority to do it. And you know, when there's a whole dimension of using the scepter and seeing it as an iron rod that comes out of Psalm 149, and where it talks about the high praises of God coming out of our mouth. You know, and the translation in all the translations is not good, because it indicates talking about being on our bed, where it isn't talking about a physical bed, it's talking about a place of intimacy. So from the place of intimacy, the high praises of God can come out of our mouths, and we begin to execute vengeance. Now, that's not on people, but it's on the enemy and the spheres of the enemy. And it talks about putting nobles into fetters, and it's about restricting the authority the enemy has. And that's why when you see it as being red hot, there's a thing there which is about fire, and about it carrying a dimension of the fire of God, which talks about judgment. And so that rod is to bring judgment into certain realms where the enemy has access, and we are to put him into chains. And Psalm 149, so I would encourage you to look at it, because it talks about their ruling, and it talks about engaging that. And scepters, you know, come in very many forms, because we're talking about symbols of authority, you know, and some are scepters which are scepters of favor. Absolutely, we release favor and release blessing, because that's what a king does. He's there on a throne to bless his subjects, to make them live in a dynamic of being blessed. You know, that's God's desire all the time for us, that we would live in a blessed, empowered to prosper dynamic. And you know, go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, 28. He blessed them, you know, and then he released them to be fruitful and to multiply and to fill the earth and subdue it and to have dominion. But he blessed them first. And the word blessing means to empower, to prosper, to succeed at the highest level. And that is God's intention to us, that we succeed at the highest level to our destiny and what we've been called to do. And so that is a symbol there of rulership. It's, you know, represented in the ark by Aaron's rod that budded. So it's a symbol of authority, but it's an authority that produces fruit. And so, you know, you would sometimes people see scepters and they have different color stones on them, and some of those stones are representing the redemptive gifts they carry. Sometimes they represent something of the seven spirits of God, just depending on, you know, depending on what it is God's trying to show you through it. And sometimes people's scepters and their crowns will have similar color, jewels and things which represent things to them. But in this case, I think, you know, when it comes to, you know, it says that Jesus rules with a rod of iron, you know, and he rules with that rod, an iron rod of authority. And so if he's offering you an iron rod, what he's saying is, because it blistered in your hand, because you took it with your left hand rather than your right, it's making sure that everything you do in authority and power means that you're standing on the right hand of the Father in the position of authority connected to him. So his authority is coming through you. It's not your authority. So if you are using your left hand, and it's nothing to be with being right-handed or left-handed, it's to being that Jesus stands on the right hand of the Father, because that is the symbol of authority. And the right hand is where we use authority. You know, it's just making sure you're in the right position to execute authority that way. Because if it's to do with judgment and it's to do with bringing justice, we have to make sure we're standing in a position of righteousness to do it. Otherwise, it can be vengeance in a wrong sense, and revenge. You know, and even when we're dealing with the enemy and we're dealing with fallen angelic realms and that area, we still have to do it from a heart of love. You know, it's like everything must flow out of righteousness, even when we're dealing with the enemy. Otherwise, we get in danger of operating in the same spirit that he operates in, and we must always operate in an opposite spirit and coming out of love to do things. So, yeah, it's like, you know, I think God's calling you to some things. He's just warning you, make sure you do it from the right place, in the right authority, and then that authority will be released, and you'll see dimensions of power released through it. You know, no doubt.
Is it possible then that I can go back to that and redo it with the right hand? I mean,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then you take that scepter, and you then can go to your mountain, and you can then, okay, what is this mandate for? You know, I have been given this rod of iron, you know, and it's got a red hot tip. Okay, what area is this for? Is this in my own circumstances, in my own life? Is this in the church? Is this in an area? Again, it's going back, making sure that you're clear, because what you don't want to do is step outside of the judicial area or level of authority that you've been given to rule, because that's when danger takes place. You know, and my encouragement would be, yeah, go back, and then go to take that rod of authority, go into the court of strategy, and actually say, okay, what is my mandate for using this rod? Because the rod itself is a symbol of authority, but what for? And it could be associated with a particular mountain you have. It could be associated with, generally, your life is going to be used to bring the fiery judgment of God into situations. So you're going to use that rod of iron to draw lines. And people will have choices to make. There's all sorts of ways. Some people get given fiery swords. There are all sorts of different symbols for similar things to bring kingdom authority into situations. And I would encourage you to certainly look at Psalm 149 and just meditate in there and see what comes out of that in terms of the authority that God is maybe showing you about. So, okay. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, actually, you give a lot of the answers of some of the experiences that I did have too. In one of the places that I went, I also got a ring. What the ring represents?
Okay. Yeah. Well, a ring is, again, if you think of the prodigal returning to the father placed a ring on his finger, and it was a ring of sonship. And it, again, what it represented as, you are in a place of inheritance. Because he'd wasted his inheritance, if you like, on doing his own stuff, but because he came back with a repentant heart, the father welcomed him and then gave him a ring, and that ring was re-establishing his sonship, so that he needed no shame, he needed nothing that had come out of him wasting his inheritance. He had been restored, he had been brought back into relationship, and therefore he received the ring of sonship. And so that's the sort of the symbol that represents. And often the ring of sonship has a seal with it. And you use the ring to seal things into agreement. And so often when I take a scroll, I've taken scrolls to the court, a chancellor's court, they often seal it. And so often a lion, an eagle, ox gets sealed on it, which is a symbol that it's been released in authorized. And so sometimes showing you that you have a ring is that what I would encourage you to look at the ring. Is it just a ring? Is it jeweled? Has it got a seal on it? God may be saying that you've been called into authorizing certain things to take place. And so again, from our mountains of authority, it's not just that we get to do things, we also get to authorize things. You know, so sometimes it's like there are things that come before us, maybe in our own personal settings, it may be even in our family, So we get to authorize our children being released into blessing, or we get to authorize things in heaven so that they can be manifested on earth. And there's a degree where those authorizations are sealed, and your seal then is the sign that you again can take it to the angelic court, and they recognize the seal, and they recognize this is authorized. Therefore, then they get released into going ahead of things and opening up opportunities, or touching people, or drawing people together into connections, so that authorization can get released through kingdom connections. All sorts of things that can happen through that. But again, you know, once I've been given something like that, then I just usually take it back into an intimate place with God and just start to quiz him about it. Say, okay, what does this represent to me? You know, and actually, what are the spheres that I'm being called to authorize? You know, because sometimes it's like God needs us to authorize things that is his heart already, because he's given us the authority for this planet. And until we authorize him to do things, or someone authorizes him to do it, he doesn't do it. So he's looking for judicial release. So our authorization, I know it sounds strange, but actually that's why God gave Adam and Eve the mandate for the planet. And Satan took it off them when they sinned, or they gave it to him, and then Jesus came and took it back, and now Jesus is giving it to us. In Matthew 28, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me, therefore go. So now we can go with the same mandate, because he took that mandate as a man. He's now gone back into heaven. He is a God-man, if you like, in the realms of heaven as king, but we are still authorized under that same mandate to bring God's rule and God's government. And so sometimes it's like that seal of things, we authorize things, you know. And, you know, there are other dimensions of things around that where we become boundary stones, and we can limit things. So we can release things, we can also limit things in who we are. And I'd encourage you just to go and, again, what is that for? What is the sphere for? Is this something generally that's part of my destiny, that I will be one who authorizes it? And that's why it says in Amos, I think, you know, God does nothing without first releasing that to his holy prophets. Because it's those people who begin to prophesy out, to release that out, that then gives him the authorization to do things, you know. And he's looking for people all the time to come into agreement with him to bring authorization, so that we can really start to see things change from our heavenly perspectives first. And I think that's the key. Authorize it in heaven, release it on earth. So yeah, if that sort of helps a little bit.
Yes, it does a lot. Thank you. Actually, the ring was not with a seal, was a precious stone. It
Yes.
was big. But I'm going to do what you told me. I'm going to go and ask him what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I want to share, you know, in the gardens, when we go to the first garden, into the second garden, I find a new place in the first garden that you didn't mention. So I was kind of like excited. I was like, whoa, this is new. It was really fun.
Yeah.
It was like another room under the water. Not the one with the chest, but in the garden before, it's another room too under the water. And it was fun. It was fun to get there. Do you know other room, or it was just me imagining things?
No, there's loads of places, you know, for all of us to discover on our journey. So, you know, I'm not really trying to describe things in it, because basically you have to find them yourselves, and how you will experience them will be in line with who you are and how God speaks to you. And heaven is multiversed. You know, it's like we can go to the same place at the same time, you know, and actually we not see each other, because we're engaging in something that connects to that place in the realm that God has enabled us to connect to it. Sometimes we do. Sometimes I see other people there, and sometimes I see other things. But often I can be on the throne of grace, and so can another million people be on the throne of grace at the same time, sat with God. You know, because actually it's about individually, uniquely us connecting to as a dimensional place within our own personal experience of him. And so, yeah, there's loads of places. You know, I create my own places within the garden of my heart. I release my creativity, and I have an intimate place, a secret place where I go with God. I have an area where I know I can go, and the tablecloth is there, and I can go and feast from it. You know, I can go into the river. There is no right or wrong. It's our garden, and we get to create it. You know, and the more we're connected with our creative power to think things into being that way, the more we will create. Now, within God's garden, within Eden, and within His garden, there are again dimensions of things that we have not yet come across. You know, I went to the garden of God, and you know, when you talked earlier about you went through the door into the stars, and it was almost like you connected with it. I had the same when I went to the garden of God. I was lying in the air because there's such a place. If you're lying on the ground, you're connected to something, and sometimes it can be a distraction. So one day I was lying there, and I felt distracted, and I was thinking about some things, and the Father basically said to me, "You don't need to think here." And as he said that, it's like I just lifted up in the air, and I just was floating. I was just floating in the air, not connected to anything, feeling really odd. Because unless you've ever been in space and weightless, none of us have ever been not connected to something physically. Because either our feet is on the ground or we're lying down, we're always connected to something. So that weightlessness, it's like that. I experienced that in the garden of God, and I was weightless and feeling totally not connected to anything. And then all of a sudden, it was like every atom, or even the smallest strings of particles of my being, just began to come off myself. So I was not connected, and I'm there, and all of a sudden I start to become part of the air, the atmosphere. And I felt things and was connected to things, past, present, and future, like I've never been before. And actually, I was connected to creation in a way I'd never been before. And things in my heart changed because I touched something of the harmony of God in everything. Because it says in Ephesians 4:6 that God is in everything, through everything, and over everything. So there's in everything, God is there. And when I came back into this realm, I suddenly started to connect up to God in inanimate things or in places in a different way than I'd done before. Because suddenly I was feeling the connection to where God was and where God is. But when I was in that realm and everything just went out, I went back in time, and I went back to see something that has always been intriguing to me, you know, and I've been to the same place. I mean, it's the Great Pyramid of Giza, and I've been there probably 5 or 6 times. You know, we've done holidays, and I've always, because I wanted to know, why was this place built? You know, who built it? How did it get built? Because it's like, I know it wasn't got built with a few 100,000 slaves doing it. So, and I knew there was something special about it. And so, as I was just out into time, I ended up looking and seeing how the pyramid was built. And I saw things about what was built in it, and certain chambers in it that were built, and certain trading floors that were put in those chambers. And I'm like, wow. And I saw some of the technology in terms of light and sound that were used at that point in time, and I'm just connected. So that whole thing of there is new places in God and new things that are there for us to discover all the time. You know, I remember Ian Clayton talking about when he picked up a blade of grass. I think it was one of the Spirit of Knowledge had played a joke on him, and because he thought he wanted to know everything about God, so he said, pick up that blade of grass. And he picked up the blade of grass, and just information about God that was in that blade of grass just exploded his mind, and he dropped it because it just was just like, wow. And the spirit of knowledge just laughed, because it's like, we think we can know all of God. It's just like God is infinite in that sense. And so, I've been back to the Garden of God so many times, and the last 2 or 3 times I've been back there, I've seen things I've never seen before. And I actually realized where a place of intimacy I'd been in several encounters in the past was. I didn't realize it was there. I'd been there. I didn't realize it was in the Garden of God. I didn't know where it was, but I saw it there. And I saw a golden mountain there, and which I'd never seen before. And I went to the golden mountain. I met Metatron, who's the keykeeper of heaven and the timekeeper. He gave me a golden key. I'd been in the Garden of God a number of times, never had that experience. Previous meetings there, I went and I felt the Father say, just look up. And as I began to look up, because I tend to look at him, and it's like I can fix my eyes on him. I looked up and I see the stars. And I'm looking up thinking, wow, I've never seen this. And then the stars started to change and move around and form a new constellation. And it was the constellation of an eagle. And I'm sort of looking at this star thinking, wow, what is that? I'm thinking, I know there's a constellation of Taurus and the bull, the ox. I know there's the lion, Leo, and all that stuff within the stars as constellations. But I'm looking, there's an eagle, and it changed. And as I'm there in intimacy in that place, something I did in the morning that I had in my own personal time with God, I had an encounter with him, and there was a mandate that was given, and I went to that place in the Garden of God and had something released from that pool in the Garden of God that the next time I went back was to do with this eagle and soaring into the heavens, into a higher realm and different things. So many things. I find new things every day. New places, and often, I've been to, even this week, I've been to several places I've never been before. Did some things I've never done before. That's why it's such a journey of an adventure, really, of things that are always there. So, I went up the waterfall, I don't know how many 100 times before I realized that there was a room behind the waterfall. It was this cave behind the waterfall that had alcoves in it that had things in there. And I'd been in there once and was given an assignment by someone in there, and never knew where it was. And I led some people up the waterfall once, and as they came, we were sharing afterwards what had happened, and they said, oh, I went into this room. I didn't go to the top of the waterfall. I went into this room, and in this room there were these things, and there was these scrolls, and there was alcoves and whatever. And I thought, you're describing somewhere I've been. So the next time I went up the waterfall, I went, okay, I'm going to go in there and see. Yeah, this is the place. Now, why it was there, but I think because it's something about deep calling to deep, and these were some of the deeper things of our destiny that get revealed there. And maybe that's just me, and maybe others. Obviously, it was symbolic for somebody else. Which find the places that are really symbolic to us. For me, gardens, rivers, waterfalls, and pools, I had so much revelation in pools. Going back to your ring also, I was given a ring with a massive blue diamond, and shown to look into it, and it was called the Ring of Destiny. And an angel spoke to me and said, you need to look into this. And as I looked into it, I was able to see into other realms, and I've done that a number of times. I tend to forget because I can go to all these places now, but then I looked into that ring, and that ring would show me somewhere, and I'd end up being able to go to the place it showed me. So there's all sorts of things and exciting experiences and things that we can engage through it, without doubt. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you. That was fun. It was fun just to listen to you. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go visit that cave under the waterfall now. And yeah, It's funny that you say you were in the garden with God and you look to the stars and you see a galaxy with an eagle, because something similar happened to me, but it was in a mountain. And I was in a mountain and I was looking up and I couldn't see the heavens. And then I saw like this tiny galaxy forming. And what I got is like every time you can go to your mountain, I guess it's my mountain,
Yeah.
you can see what God is creating, what He created, I guess.
Yeah, oh yeah, because essentially what it's just showing you is there are things going on in the heart of God about you that are being released when you go into that place of authority. And God starts to do things around you, and the angels start to do things around you. And remember, when you're on the throne, you have the 10 canopies of angels over you. So it's like over the throne of God, you have the canopy of angels, and you have the cherubim, and you know the seraphim, and all those different angels, the different canopies of the angels, the different levels of them. But when they recognize that your life is a throne of God and He is on your throne, on the mountain of your own life, and then when you begin to rule on your throne, that canopy is around you. And so you can access the different realms of the canopies of those angels, because they are there to interact in different things. And you know, one whole power source, the wheels within wheels, the Ophanim, and you know, you have the Kashmilim and the Seraphim and the Ishim and all the different things, the Ben Elohim, you know, and Malachim. There's 10 different spheres. Well, you know, most of us have never really engaged with that. Well, that actually is a canopy around us that we're supposed to engage with and interact with. And some of the things we begin to see is part of what that's going on in that canopy of angels over our life, you know, and that can be over our mountain and our sphere. And everyone will get one of those, but most people don't connect, or they don't sort of engage with the different realms, because they're different spheres and realms of the angelic. It's not like, well, I don't know, it's difficult to describe, because the whole kingdom is a dimensional place that you can step in and through and engage in different things, not in the same time-space dimension that we live in here. But we can expect that canopy of angels to be manifested over us when they recognize us as a place of God's rulership, and where that is in operation in our lives, you know. And the more we can expect that, the more we can engage with it. So there's a lot of, you know, a lot of things with the angelic realm that I think we really need to learn to engage with, because it's going to release ministry, because that's what they are, ministering spirits to our inheritance in salvation. So we minister it, and they minister with us and for us and on our behalf. And you know, I know Ian used to talk about it and say, well, most of them are just bored because they got nothing to do, because no one's interacting with them, and no one is getting them assigned to their scrolls, and because we don't talk to them and we don't listen to them as well and be involved with them, then there's very little interaction that takes place, and there should be a lot of interaction that takes place. But we're all on a journey, so we're all learning this stuff. It's not like, oh no, we're all bad children because we don't know it yet. We're just discovering it, and that's how God sees it. He's longing for us to discover more and more of what's there for us as His children, you know, which is great, you know. So yeah. Okay. I don't know how much time you got left. I don't know if you want to engage in something. Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, we've been talking a lot about mountains and scrolls and all those sorts of things. So it would be really good, I think, maybe we can look to engage there in that realm today, you know, in the realm of the kingdom of God, and we can look to engage with and around some of those things of connection. I think that would be good. So what I'd encourage you to do is just to begin to close your eyes and just begin to fix your eyes on Jesus. Open the eyes of your heart Begin to think of him as you're doing that, and there's an open heaven over you. And we know, just like with Jacob and his ladder, we can engage in the realm of heaven, and we can just walk up the steps that are there as they're taking us into the realm of heaven. And just sense now, as you just walk through the atmosphere of heaven, there's a door standing open, and Jesus is standing in the door, waiting to take you by the hand. And just allow Jesus to take you by the hand. He's going to lead you through the different dimensions of the veils of the tabernacle, through the realms of heaven, through the veil of the way and the truth and the life, right into the ark of God's presence. As we come around the ark of God's presence with the cherubim covering the mercy seat, the blood of Jesus is alive and living and vibrant. And as we look into the presence of God, we're engaging around the four faces of God and the names of God and the rhythm that comes in and out of the presence of God. We engage with the Yod and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. And just looking to the manifest presence of the four faces of God, manifesting the lion, the ox, the eagle, and the man, revolving, moving. It's living, it's alive. The very presence of God is there. As you draw near, you come into alignment with the lion, or the ox, or the eagle, or the man. Just be drawn. As you stand in that place, you begin to see from the perspective of being in Him, in the Father. As you draw near to Him, He draws near to you. And He begins to reveal what is on the scroll of your heart, what is on that scroll. He begins to reveal, and you will begin to feel yourself over the next days and period of time drawn to the things which are the desires that He has for us. The sum of the thoughts that He has for us will begin to draw you, both in the realms of earth and heaven. So just sense being able to look and see from the perspective of heaven, being able to speak from with the voice of heaven, as you speak from the face of the lion or the eagle or the ox or the man, and sense the destiny of God. The manna that you can eat is the food of His will that will bring you fulfillment and contentment and blessing in your life. And just sense the canopy of angels that is over you and around you. Just begin to sense. This is a place to come around your destiny and draw near to that. And I believe Jesus would just now again take you by the hand, and he wants to take you again. He'll lead you through dimensions and places, and he's going to take you to the record room where your scrolls are, and he may want to lead you to the scroll of your destiny to reveal something. He may lead you to a specific scroll or mandate for something now within your life. But this scroll that he leads you to is about your mountain and about who you are and the mandate that you have as a son to rule. Now just sense or see or feel or perceive something of that scroll for today and what he would want to reveal to you. Now just take that with you. Take the scroll that he's given you. Now you take it, and he's going to take you now again through the dimensions of heaven. As you go through those veils, he's going to take you to your mountain. The mountain and the realm and the kingdom, your place of authority, who you are. It's taking you to that place. And on that mountain, on the top of that mountain, there is your throne. And if that throne is unoccupied, you can take your place on that throne. Just be seated on the throne. The angel, your angel in heaven, the Ben Elohim angel assigned to your throne, to you, is behind the throne. Now Jesus would take a crown and he places it on your head. As the symbol of your right to rule in lordship. He places the mantle around your shoulders. Just sense the color of the jewels that are on the crown. Sense the color that's on the mantle. And he places in your right hand the scepter of authority. Again, look at it. Sense what it's like. Feel it there. Now begin to look down and see the mountains that are below your mountain. There are mountains below, and ask Jesus to reveal some of their names. And sense the connection you have to them. For you rule those mountains once they're clear from your mountain. And I'd encourage you to look, observe, just sense. Are the thrones occupied, unoccupied? Is there things around that mountain? Does it appear in any symbolic way? Just open up your heart. Just allow those senses to touch you of those particular mountains there and your engagement with it. you are. Now, I just encourage you to take your scroll and just take it to the court of angels. And just present your scroll before the angels in the court. And see the angels being assigned to your scroll and your mandate. And those angels are being released. They're being released from your scroll to engage with your mandate. And you can take your scroll back to your mountain where you're ruling and sense the angels and the canopy around your mountain and sense their interaction with you. And as you can release that mandate and as you begin to outwork the mandate on your mountain, then see that the angels are going to be involved much more. Now we can just step back into this realm and bring back with us those experiences with us. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I dropped out of the middle of it. I really struggled to get back in for some reason until I clicked back into the green camera. But hopefully, you know, around those areas where you know, mandates and scrolls and different things like that is just looking to pursue and to engage and go back to those things over and over again and the things that you're encountering, you know, and as you do that, you know, you'll get led into revelation about it, and the things that are there you'll find, particularly around the ark. And when you engage around the ark, things in your heart that get revealed. You know, it's like, you know, it talks about the tablets being in the ark, and God writes on the tablets of our heart, and it's like our desires begin to get transformed there, and our hearts get drawn towards fresh desires which are linked to our destiny, because we're coming into alignment. You know, the whole thing with the four faces of God and around that ark is a place of alignment where we begin to start to see out of the different faces, and we look in to the presence of God, but we can look out from, and we can look in, and then we can speak out from. And so we begin to come into that place where we know where we are in God and see things from a different perspective. And our hearts does get changed. And really, I found myself drawn. The more I've spent time there, and sometimes I just spend time, just breathing in and out, sort of Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, because of the names and letters of God. They carry with it a real sense of I'm breathing out and I'm breathing in, and I'm breathing out and I'm breathing in. And that's really what I'm doing the whole of my life. I'm coming into heaven, I'm coming out of heaven, I'm going in and coming out. In sense, I'm just wanting to live from there. And so my spirit is learning to live from the perspective of being in God and seeing things from out of God. So it's an awesome place, and I'd encourage you to spend time there. And you may feel drawn to a particular face of God at a particular time, and that whole sense of where, I think one of you said earlier that the whole ark is moving. There is a sense of movement and life in it. It's not a dead thing. It's a living thing that is looking for us, and the sound that comes out of it and the frequency it comes out of it is looking for resonance, and it's looking for us to come into agreement around there, which then I sort of tend to go there before I go, unless I'm directed otherwise, because then I get a sense of where I need to go next. Do I need to go to a courtroom? Do I need to go to my mountain? Where do I go? Because I've found an alignment that's drawn me and directs me in that place, if that sort of makes sense. Okay. All right. So I'll sort of leave